Alright guys, welcome back to another Sunday special. I'm doing this from my Mac computer, so if it's a little bit different than usual, I apologize. It's probably going to be a slightly lower quality, but hopefully you guys still get some value out of it. So welcome back again to the Sunday videos. I do this each Sunday and I go through the markets, talk about major things that have been going on, as well as some things that are upcoming. And I also talk about some of the trade setups and ideas that I'm looking for the week ahead. So I wanted to start with the dollar. Last week was really interesting for the US dollar because we had this little, I'm trying to find my little drawing thing. Usually I just use my my tools, but I'm not on my normal computer. But we had some really strong bullishness for the US dollar last week, but it all sort of got snuffed out by the jobs report. And I want to talk a little bit about that and why this sort of encourages my bearish thesis to stay strong on the US dollar. Okay, here's why. If you've been watching my content, you know I've been bearish generally on the US dollar right now due to their concerns around inflation here in the United States, talking about things like what happened on Friday. We'll talk about that. So again, the big question on the dollar is the Fed going to talk about tapering and raising rates? Those are ultimately the things that would probably drive the price higher on the US dollar. That is pretty much what people are wanting to see for the US dollar bullish thesis. But for that to occur, we need something that causes the Fed to basically say, we're going to change our mind on that stubborn opinion not to raise rates. Because they've been pretty stubborn. They've been pretty set on the idea of keeping rates low to help the economy as long as possible. But when you have high unemployment and you have at least inflation, right? Those are things that prompt the Fed to be forced into raising rates. Well, the US dollar was not super bullish on Friday because the numbers that came out were not incredibly positive. They were slightly amiss, and we were expecting a lot of good bullishness from the week up to it, and then all of a sudden the numbers were just a little bit disappointing. So where does that leave us? Well, that is not enough, probably, in my view, and probably a lot of other people's view. It's not enough to encourage the Fed right now to raise rates or to drastically make any adjustments to slow inflation and all that. So to me, that gives me more bearish thesis than anything on the US dollar. So that gives me my overall bias on this. I would not be surprised to see a move back down to, at some point here, this recent low down at 89.6. So I'm going to be watching out for things like that going into this week. So that's the big picture. Last week's numbers were a bit disappointing. So that takes us into some of the other US dollar crosses. What about euro dollar? Well, euro dollar, I would not be surprised to see that this was the low. You can see we had a beautiful green candle there on Friday off of the reaction of the dollar, the jobs report, right? So this, to me, looks very interesting for a potential move up to the, where's that path thing? I want to play with the path. I'm still, after all these years of using TradingView, you would think I would remember this stuff. Here it is. So I would not be surprised to see a move back to the highs there this week on the euro dollar. On top of that, if we could break it, then again, it's back to that thesis that we had prior to the jobs report, which for me was, a push back to something like 1.234. This is the scenario that I am most interested in when looking at the euro dollar. Looking at something like this is very, very interesting to me. I think that there's some opportunities, for continued long pressure on this currency pair, especially again with that back to normalcy for me on my bearish thesis on the US dollar due to the numbers last week. So again, this is what I mean when I say I combine fundamental analysis with technical analysis. Those reports are really what move the markets more than just head and shoulders, technical indicators, technical patterns. Those things are helpful, don't get me wrong, but it is ultimately what is really happening in the real world that causes value to go up or down for various currencies. So for me right now, I think that the US dollar is a sell. Am I going to be right about that? Maybe. If I'm right, then I could make some decent trades that could lead to some nice profits. But if I'm wrong, I'm going to look to try and be wrong as minimal as possible. That's pretty much the name of the game. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm trying to just make trade setups that give me the best chance to make good money and a small chance, or at least a damage control should I lose money. So with the Euro USD, again, I like this setup. I like for the idea of breaking through this high. I'm going to change this color because it bothers me. There we go. Yeah, so something like this, right? Watching to see if we can get back to those highs for starters this week, and then maybe looking for setups from there. So that's one thing that I am watching for on the euro dollar. Let's look at the pound dollar here, see if there's anything very interesting for the pound. I also want to take a quick look at the Trading and Economics website. just to see if there's anything. So week ahead, by the way, if we look at G7 finance ministers reached a historic agreement on Saturday to reform the global tax system as head of highly anticipated G7. Interesting. Elsewhere, monetary policy meetings in the Eurozone, Canada, and Russia will be keenly watched, as well as update GDP figures for Japan, the Eurozone, and the UK and South Africa. Okay, so we've got some interesting stuff coming up this week. Could be impactful, this GDP for the UK, also the Eurozone, and of course with Japan. So those are three major areas with GDP figures coming out. So that could be very interesting. Of course, if you trade the South African Rand, then maybe you're interested in that as well. But yeah, so interesting stuff there. Also, other important include U.S. and China inflation and foreign trade data, U.S. and Australia consumer sentiment, Germany, and okay, yeah, so it's kind of a busy week yet again. We had a very busy week last week. There's one more thing I want to show you guys for the pound here. Let's go look at the COT reports. I want to see what the pound is up to here in terms of what the institutional guys and girls are up to. Let's go down here, and I will just put on the non-commercials here. Okay, so the pound kind of remains flat. Overall, it's been pretty bullish. You know, during 2020 and a lot of 2021, we've seen some bullish thesis on the UK or on the pound, but right now we've been pretty flat. So not a whole lot that it tells us there. What about the US dollar? I want to take a quick look at the dollar. Last time I looked, it looked kind of mixed, but let's see. So slight buying there on the US dollar lately. I'm not too surprised by that, just because there has been that question going into the figures this week. Was the Fed going to be prompted by better job numbers to push interest rates higher? But it seems like right now the dollar's pretty much flat with a slight upward bias there, so kind of interesting there. And then yeah, so let's go back to the pound dollar. From a technical view, this kind of lines up with what the COT is telling us, because again, you've kind of got this big circular area that is just a range-bound market. We've got back and forth and not a whole lot of anything, truthfully, right? So for me, this maintains what I've been thinking and saying about the pound dollar. I do have a bias to the upside on this currency pair. I'd like to take it higher. I'd like to see trade setups that could give me opportunities to go long. But for me, the biggest thing that would be of interest would be something like this: a breakout of this range, a retest, and looking to go long off of that. Again, with all this US dollar stuff going on, I'd really like to see just a clean push by the UK or by the pound bulls here to really get me involved. I don't mind being not the first one to buy something in an uptrend. I just prefer to be buying something that has strength, buy something that has momentum. We had a try here to try and get past this level, but you can see it didn't really last long, and sellers continued to move this thing back into this range that we've been stuck in for a while. So again, for me with the pound, biggest thing that I'm waiting here on the swing trade side of things is to look for a push past this level. Now on this intraday level, if you're more of a day trader, maybe there's some opportunities just trading back and forth on these ranges. But for me, big picture is I want to see a break of that range, because I think it could lead to higher prices and an extension of this trend that we saw back here. You know, if we were to see the same trend here, for example, from this level to where we currently sit, if we were to just copy and paste that again onto the chart, if we were to see that same scenario, which we know in markets happens very often, you get a trend extension that does the same thing yet again, that would lead us up to places like 1.4750. That, by the way, from the top of this range, roughly is somewhere in the neighborhood of 500, 600 pips. So that's what I mean by I'm looking to catch the bigger moves if possible. You know, if you were to have caught some of this move here, which I'm sure many traders trading during this time on the long side were very happy about, you can catch these big moves, and they come every once in a while. They may take some time. You may see consolidation points like this, and then occasionally you get the nice breakout, right? Consolidation, and you get a nice breakout. So yes, I have been waiting a while on the pound here, but it looks like a longer term consolidation, which in turn potentially could turn to a longer term trend to the upside. So I am watching for that. That is a scenario that I like best on the pound dollar. Let's talk about gold, XAU, USD, to see what's going on with gold. So gold was very, very interesting. We essentially saw this thing spike down all week. We saw it sell off real hard during the first week of June here, but then we had some real interest come in on the jobs numbers again very quickly afterwards, seeing gold rally back. And this just sort of lines up with everything that we've been talking about, with the fact that there's that concern around inflation for the U.S. That is a big push into gold. It's a big driving force. When there's inflation concerns, that's a good catalyst for gold usually, right? And so as long as we see that, as long as we see concerning stuff or not the best stuff for the U.S. dollar, I'm going to maintain a gold bull. So how does that set us up for this week? Well, if you're really looking for aggressive buy setups, let me see if we can just change this to demand. If you're really looking for aggressive buy setups, maybe there's something like this intraday. Maybe there's moves past. But again, I still am I'm always looking for this same idea, this concept of, okay, here's essentially the ceiling floor, the ceiling level, and I'm waiting for it to potentially come into being a floor, right? So I love that break, that retest, and continuation higher on the gold market, right? So I'm highlighting this area. The high range was right around 1910. So if we were to clear 1910, a retest of that area could be great. And you might say, well, Nick, what if it just consolidates for a week? Then there'd probably be no trade setup for me. But let's say we get another big bullish week and we start to break through that level. Maybe on the intraday levels, I could look to try and get involved and go with it. Again, yes, it's kind of like buying the high if you just look at it from a quick glance, but what you're really trying to do is you're trying to catch something like this here. Here's a beautiful scenario of that concept in play. Here's that ceiling, right? So when you're coming into price here, you're like, okay, it looks like I'm right at the high here, but then you see that sign of strength. Any of the profit taking that goes on, anything that pulls us back here, looks like a great opportunity for me to try and to ride that thing higher. Because again, markets, when they're in strong trends, that's where I find, in my strategy, I find the best profit opportunities. So that's what I'm looking for on the gold market. Again, inflation still a concern, so gold still on my mind on the bullish side. Let me show you guys not just my mind though, because I also want to know kind of what are the big players doing. So let's go look at the commodities. We'll go to gold and take a look here on the website. If you're not already using the website, by the way, it is a1trading.com. We've put together a ton of free tools for traders, so you can go check it out and look at the COTs anytime you want. Okay, so the latest data on gold was sort of flat, which is actually sort of bullish. Now, if you aren't familiar with COT data, it is Tuesday's data released every Friday. So yes, it is a little bit lagging. So this is as of Tuesday. There was sort of a flat move here on gold, which is very positive considering that on Tuesday, what was Tuesday? So somewhere back here, I can't do math, but Tuesday, right, they were sort of flat on gold after a while of accumulation. So it doesn't really surprise me. We did see a little bit of selling, but I would also not be surprised to see that in the second half of that week, last week, we probably got some nice accumulation on gold during these pullbacks. That was probably a big old opportunity to a lot of smart traders, a lot of big traders that said, okay, probably a good chance to pick up some gold here at a discount, and that is exactly what we saw towards the end of the week with price pushing back up. So again, that is pretty confident for me here looking at gold. We have been seeing accumulation on the gold chart. You can see here it is, 1, 2, 3 weeks of solid buying from institutional traders, and then the last week was a slight, very slight, basically flat move for gold. That to me still is positive until we see a directional change back the other way on gold. Very, very much interested in being bullish on it. So let me talk one more thing about gold. If we're looking at gold and I'm saying, okay, well, we've held the lows here. If things really get going, where's a potential target? Well, if I scroll out and look at the daily chart for just a moment, I'm still liking this 1950 level that we've talked about for a while on the channel. So again, we got that pullback. I gotta clean all this stuff up because this is starting to look ugly. Let me do this. Sorry for all the pop-ups and stuff. Like I said, remind me tomorrow. Does anybody else do that on their Mac? Can I just get you to leave? Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So big picture. You've got some levels here. Let me highlight just on the 4-hour chart one more moment the biggest areas that I see right now. So of course you've got this level in green that we've got here. Previous resistance held as support once, but now breaking through. You can see sellers tried to hold that area, but again, going to be interesting to see how it plays out this week. One more thing also is this level here. Let me just extend that out. Again, I gotta get all these levels set up nicely for future viewing. But anyways, those are the main areas that I see. If you get a dip back, if we see some short-term bearishness on gold, I would also honestly be interested in a potential move back down to this. If that happens, I'd be loving to look for an opportunity to try and get long there as well. So that's two long scenarios, either this scenario or something like this, pulling back there for me. Those are my opinions. Those are my trade setups that I am personally interested in. Please remember, these videos are not me telling you what is absolutely going to happen and that you should go put your money on this. That is not what I'm trying to tell you to do. I'm trying to share my opinions and my thoughts here, and you should make up your own mind and opinions. Let's take a look at dollar CAD here. So dollar CAD sold off real hard towards the end of the week here. 4-hour view, you can see this level held beautifully. I'm gonna tease myself with this, but I thought about selling dollar CAD, prior to when it was starting to get up to the top of this range. But again, I didn't take that trade because it was right in front of big news, and I usually try and avoid doing that just because, again, we don't know what the news could be. If that news had been really positive for the dollar, I would have taken the fastest loss of my life, right? So, it's one of those things. Actually, last week, funny story. I know I'm sidetracking a bit. I took a long trade on the Aussie dollar, and I got stopped out of that thing so fast. It was like I told Miles, who was sitting in the office with me, I told him, okay, I'm taking a trade. We'll see how it goes. And literally like 20 minutes later, I think it was somewhere back here, I took a long trade at support. Yeah, I think it was like right here. And then on the next candle, literally got stopped out so quickly. And so it was like 20 minutes later, I was like, all right, Miles, I took a loss. So it happens, though. It's all good. That was one of the trades that ended my winning streak that I've been on. While we're on Aussie dollar, this pair has been, it was kind of mean to me last week, but I'll still talk about it. So Aussie dollar, kind of just a confusing thing here. We were holding this range. We had the news, so we started out super bearish on Aussie dollar. Things were looking really great for the US dollar. Then the US dollar came out, sobered it up a little bit, and pushed it right on back up. So where we're at with the Aussie, it's kind of like just a situation where I'm watching this thing, and until it starts to break out, I'm probably going to pause on trading the Aussie. I've taken a couple losses in here just from trying to trade the chop, which is, honestly, if I'm speaking truthfully, I probably shouldn't have taken some of those trades, but I really want to be long in the Aussie, but it's my fault for not being patient enough to really look for the setups. The setups that I really am interested in, I'm telling you now, so I can remind myself if they occur. I love this setup. I love the idea of a break out of this consolidation zone and looking for fresh, pressure to the upside. If you're a fan of Wyckoff theory, you could have argued that this is like a spring pattern, right? This idea of, if you don't know what that is, it's basically, you've got a strong area of support, price dips just past it, hits all the stop losses, including mine, making me look like an idiot, and then returning right on back and shooting past everything. So we'll see if that plays out. If that plays out, I'll look really dumb, and I'll know exactly what happened to me. But again, sometimes that just happens. It's not the end of the world. I've had a really great past couple months, so I'm not too bothered by it. But again, just self-reflecting here. Again, back to dollar CAD. Sorry for the jumping around, but dollar CAD, for me, I really like the idea of a deeper pullback. If dollar CAD can get somewhere up to this level, I'd be very interested in looking for sell setups. But for now, that's not really where we're at. Again, right now, it seems like we're sort of just holding resistance here. And the big picture here is if we get a super bearish week for the dollar after last week's numbers, if that kind of continues, stuff like this looks pretty interesting. That's consolidated for a while, so I would still be interested in potentially swing trading this thing lower. I've taken a lot of sell trades on dollar CAD and been happy to do so because, again, this thing has been just in a seller's market. And so as long as something is strong to the downside like this, I'm a fan of looking to short so long as the fundamentals and the sentiment make sense. Speaking of sentiment, let's just real quick, I want to go see what the Canadian dollar looks like here. Let's take a look at the CAD here and see what we've got for this currency. It's been on a crazy up thing. Look at that. Just more accumulation on the CAD. So this just gives me more and more interest in, I just want to be long in the CAD. I've been along in the CAD for weeks and weeks and weeks. Those have been my best trades. I was up 10% in the month of May, which was a very good month for me. And most of that is attributed to my CAD Swiss longs and my dollar CAD shorts. Both of those played out beautifully. So still looking to trade that, still looking to go with the trend here. If we see signs of breakouts, if we see signs of pullbacks, both of those opportunities, I am looking to get involved. Speaking of CAD Swiss, my good old faithful, Had some lovely trades in this area, have since sort of paused. Did I take something out here? I can't remember if I took this pullback somewhere. But again, with it pulling back, there might be opportunities here for this currency pair this week. I do like the idea, although it's pretty choppy. I like the idea of a pullback to this level. Fundamentally, I love this currency pair. As you know, I'm very bullish on the CAD and also bearish on the Swiss franc due to its risk-off properties. So I'm more interested in going long on the CAD and shorting or selling or using the Swiss franc as a funding currency. Funny enough, the Swiss franc actually prefers right now. They want their currency to be weaker. That is a confusing topic for newer traders, but the central bank of Switzerland, the SNB, Swiss National Bank, they've basically said, we want a weaker Swiss franc because of the trade advantages that a weaker currency has. Notice how when you go to the store, there's all these products from China. Well, China has a very advantageous trade war situation because their currency is much weaker than other places. So they're able to make products for cheap in other places, which actually in return helps their economy. Well, the Swiss franc struggles from sort of the opposite situation. They have a very expensive currency. So they'd like to purposefully, if I could speak, purposefully devalue their currency to bring them some sort of advantage in the trade war. So that's what I'm looking for, CAD Swiss. If price pulls back, I like the idea of looking for long setups, and that is something that I will be on the lookout for. I'm not going to rush that, but again, if it shows some signs of discount levels, I would very much be interested in looking for that pullback in favor of this long-term uptrend we've been seeing on the 4-hour chart. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up, you guys. Thank you very much for watching another Sunday special. If you did enjoy, please do me a favor and just subscribe down below. Smash that like button. It would help me a lot. I made sure to get this video out even though I am not at home, just because I know a lot of people wait for it. And it's also helpful for me to just get my thoughts on paper. So if you enjoyed, make sure, like I said, smash that like button. It's free to do and it really helps the channel out. Thanks so much for being here, and we will see you back in the next one.